It being 9 o'clock, we'll call the meeting in order. Pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, next is approve agenda as submitted. There'll be one item under action. Item number 4 under action will be pulled. Purpose of that is the possibility of getting another quote. So that will be item number 4 be pulled. Anything else?
That change, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Approve previous minutes. We have the board meeting of July 11th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Group work we had last week, the 18th.
Move to approve.
Bob? Is there a second?
I do, second.
Discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. At this point, we open it up for public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to have some public comment? Anybody on screen? Being no public comment, we'll go on to appointments. Public hearing pursuant to at 9 o'clock. Public hearing pursuant to Minnesota Statute 394.26 to consider adopting an updated comprehensive land use plan by ordinance.
I make,
Amelia, okay.
well, we need to make a motion to close the meeting to go into a public hearing. So I make that motion.
We go to public hearing, okay. Second for that,
Second.
for discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. So we're going to public hearing for the comprehensive land use plan. We have a couple of guests on Zoom and Marty.
We did just finished the planning commission meeting and they voted to recommend approval. It was 6 ayes and 0 nays. And what we're seeking is for the approval of the comprehensive land use plan as it currently.
As it is proposed.
Yes,
Right.
right. As in,
Okay. Is there any public comment or discussion reference to the comprehensive land use plan that's being proposed? Need input, comment, question? Anybody on Zoom? Any comment that you'd like to make, Janine, as far as he's our lead on this from TKDA?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission and members of the staff in Houston County. No other comments other than to thank the county for working with us. We've enjoyed the process, and I think that the plan represents the views of the county as well as the views of the citizen that participated in the public engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you both for being here this morning. I believe it's the findings I can find that we've gone through a lot of things, a lot of steps. Not a lot of changes, just cleaning it up. Good document to work off of the future or any discussion for the planning commission and give them a tool to do a better job, I think. So, that's what I feel. Any other comment about it?
I'll withhold comment until we have the action item.
Very good.
No, I feel the same way. I think I'd like to thank TKD and their help with helping us put this together. We had a really well thought out process, so. And they were really helpful in their knowledge and background in their previous work with other municipalities and counties. Thank you for that.
The background is very important, so. There being no other comment, we will close the public hearing at 9:05. And, Motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing
okay,
and resume to regular meeting.
for a second. I'll second it, further discussion. Being none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. We're back to the adopting or consider adopting an updated comprehensive land use plan.
No,
We have that on
we have-
action item.
that's on action item, so we should go.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be further.
If that's okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our 9-10 appointments, Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner report. I believe they're here today. Good morning. Come on up and have a seat. Got quite the report there, Doctor.
Thank you.
So,
We pull this presentation up and share the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't know I was gonna get tested on Zoom. Did that pass? See, I can put this.
We're early yet, so.
All right, sorry, I was just gonna try to flip it over so you didn't have to see the sidebar, but that's good enough. Don't want you to read ahead too far of the report.
well, I'm gonna try and read it sideways on my report.
So thank you, commissioners, for having me here today. My name is Ross Reichert. I'm the medical examiner for Houston County, the chief medical examiner for the Southern Minnesota Regional Medical Examiner's Office today. And Monica Kendall, who's also here with me, is our death investigator supervisor. So just as a brief reminder, the dark blue counties are the ones in southeastern Minnesota that we are the medical examiner office for. The light yellow county, and so we provide an entire death investigation system for those counties. Light blues, ones across Steele County, are ones that we do consult autopsies for. So it's nice because our data sort of covers this whole region, allows us to compare county to county, and we'll see some of that as we move forward. So this is our team. So we have up to 4 forensic pathologists now. Then we have our central office investigators, but most of that are in Olmsted County. But really, most importantly, I'd like to emphasize that our local counties investigators, Bob Cooper and Mike Pullinger, who've long been death investigators in the county. And so these are really, they're the front lines of our office. They're the ones that are responding 24/7, 365 to all the different calls. So I can't say enough about how important those individuals are. Then we have our other investigators within our office. And then at the very bottom, that Office of Decedent Affairs, et cetera. That's really just our administrative staff that help put things together like this data, our death certificates, and so forth. So it's a big team of people that work together. So the total number of deaths in the county were 170, 152 were reported to us. That means we touched 89% of deaths in the county. So we do this in a number of different ways. We much rather have people report deaths to us and us be able to do a preliminary investigation that decline jurisdiction and then instead of being surprised by something else. The other thing is if someone is registered with hospice, they register through hospice with us, so we know about that as a pending death. And so that's another way that we're involved, as well as approving cremation permits. So we really touch a lot of what's going on in the county, which I think overall is a good thing. So we did a total of 20 postmortem examinations or autopsies. All of those were complete autopsies. We had 14 deaths that were certified without postmortem examination. And so these are cases that fall under our jurisdiction because they're not a natural death, but they have well-documented reasons why they died. So this would be someone who falls and breaks a bone, and so that's an accident, and then they decline and die afterwards, but it's very well documented. So that's why we would sign the death certificate, but not do postmortem examination. So what's on the death certificate? You know, spend more time the last few years talking about death certificates than I ever in my life thought people would be interested in doing. So the cause of death is the reason why someone dies. The manner of death is the circumstance. Lots of other information on there, like did an autopsy occur? Were they pregnant at the time or close to their death? Did it occur at work, etc. Who uses these? Families do immediately for closure, obviously, and to know what happened and to file all sorts of paperwork that requires a death certificate. But then that data flows up to the state and then ultimately to the CDC. And so that's where you see those big numbers. And this is how many people died in the US in motor vehicle accidents or drug overdose deaths. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing. It starts with our investigators at the scene trying to understand what happens and then flows all the way up from the grassroots level to the federal level. So the first graph, and so these are by, this is the manner of death, but these are the raw numbers of deaths that occurred in the county. So these are where they actually died within the county proper. We're going to see some data later about per capita and in that areas, which doesn't really apply that much here, but just for your understanding of the tables, they include all the cases in which the injury occurred in the county. So there may be some numbers. So you might have an injury occurred here and they might have been transported outside of the hospital, outside of the county to a hospital, and that would be the per capita. These in the colored bars are just the absolute numbers of deaths that occurred in the county. So this is the manner.
Someone goes to lacrosse at the hospital and dies, and it's
Yes, we captured that.
okay.
So we capture that, and that's in the per county.
Okay.
The per capita, excuse me, data. These, the colored bars are just the ones where the death actually occurred physically within the county.
Okay.
So we're capturing two pieces of data. So we're not missing all of those that would be transported someplace else. So this is manner of death. And so this is, again, the circumstances related to it. And as you can see, the vast majority of deaths are natural deaths in the county. We'll go through the suicides and accidents in much more detail in just a moment. So when you take out the natural deaths and you break it out, you see that we have falls, which is a significant number. That kind of surprises a lot of people, but this isn't someone typically falling on ice. This is typically elderly individuals, older individuals that fall and break a bone. You fall and break a long bone, like your femur, your thigh bone, you might increase your mortality by about 50+% a year for the next 1 to 2 years, depending on what data you look at. And we have some data on that as well as who's affected. We had 3 asphyxia or choking deaths. One was a food bolus, and then there's a double suicide of carbon monoxide. And then we had 2 hangings and 3 motor vehicle accidents and 3 drug overdoses. But I'll go into more detail. So first is the suicide by disease. Asphyxia was carbon monoxide, and then the other one is there was 1 gunshot wound, 2 hangings, and then 1 other, and that was an individual that set himself on fire in a motor vehicle. So pretty unusual case. Suicide by age, had 1 in the 11-17 category, and then most of them were in the 45 to 60 category. So just trying to, some of these charts are new from previous years as we've gotten feedback from different counties. That's what people are interested in. So just looking at the age of individuals impacted. So this is the suicide rate per capita. So this would be capturing all of those in which the injuries occurred in the county, even if they were transported. In this case, there were none transported. When you're dealing with relatively low populations, such as Houston County, that if you have even a small number, like goes from 4 to 6, it really changes that per capita rate pretty dramatically. But this is something that we Let me go back one just to show you as a comparison, actually. So if you look at it by year, you can see that, so we have 2018 to 22. So you can see that, we had a little bit of a uptick in that from this year. This gives us that year over year data of what to expect. Homicide, this is completely blank. It's good. Let's
That's a
keep
good-
it that way.
that's
if you
good
don't mind.
news.
Yeah. Keep it on the other side of the Mississippi.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't say it. No, and it's great. I mean, there's probably very few counties in the entire country that can actually say that. It's something to be proud of. So again, this is the per capita rate. Basically, to be honest, all the homicides this year occurred in Homestead County. So accidental deaths by types. So we had one of the choking death. And then we had 9 falls, 3 motor vehicle accidents, 3 drug overdoses. Poisoning is a public health term that you'll see. So we put poisoning / drug overdose, but I prefer not to use the term poisoning because as soon as I say poisoning, people they don't think of drug overdoses. They think someone was poisoned with something.
Right.
So accidental deaths by crashes. So we had 2 auto / SUVs, and then the other was ATV accident. And so this is the deaths mapped out by the type of vehicle. And so you can see that the bottom H10 is the ATV, and then the H11, that larger orange dot. It's kind of hard to appreciate. It's bigger, but the motor vehicle crash there had 2 fatalities. So again, we're trying to do this county by county to see if there's any patterns or locations that come up that seem higher risk than others. And this is what it looks like year over year. So they're evenly distributed, but if that's something that we're keeping track of, again, to see if there's a particular road or intersection or something that comes to light particularly dangerous. What's particularly dangerous are deer, but that's a different discussion. That's harder to control. Yeah, in another county, we're just presenting it. 3 motorcycle crashes, or 4, 3 of which were related to deer. The 4th one likely was as well.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a really.
I know it's close in my district. We had at least 2 of those. I think 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yep. Motorcycles and deer don't mix.
No, they do not mix well. Motor vehicle fatality rate per capita. So the red line is the national average. You have Minnesota there. Again, this is per capita, so it can move quite quickly if you just have a small bump. And there were none transported. All the motor vehicle fatalities, 3 that occurred in the county, state of the county, so the numbers are the same. So accidental deaths by falls, and so what you see here is it's shifted to the elderly population, as I alluded to earlier. So getting older is dangerous in that regard. Then again, it's way shifted to the right. And then what we've started looking at is where those falls occur. And so here, 5 of those falls occurred within a care facility, 1 in a decedent's residence, and 2 in assisted living. So again, just trying to gather that data to see if there's specific, things that are at risk for public health standpoint. Drugs related deaths. And so we had 2 illegal with 1 prescription. I'll show you the contents of those in just a second. And then the deaths by age. And so this is something we've seen more and more of. It's, this sort of 45 to 64-year-old population. I'm not going to call them middle aged for personal reasons, but it is an older, in all seriousness, is an older population that people think of. They think of like younger individuals as drug overdoses. And what we've seen, particularly with the introduction of fentanyl, is that you have actually people that have been chronic drug users that are accessing fentanyl and dying, even though they've been drug users for sometimes many, many years.
Fentanyl being laced with everything, it seems like these days.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's actually quite terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there's 3 drug overdoses. You can see how that compares to the other counties in southeastern Minnesota. In Minnesota, the national average. And nationally, the highest is West Virginia. So these are the illicit drugs. So there was one that was pure fentanyl and one that was pure cocaine, which is, I'll be honest, relatively uncommon. We're seeing more and more mixed drugs. So it'll be like, fentanyl and methamphetamine is pretty common. Fentanyl, methamphetamine, and like an illicit prescription drug as well. So quite a few of those deaths. And so comes in lots of different forms, is sometimes in like these fake pills that people have that they think are diverted prescription meds that are actually pure fentanyl. Sometimes it's laced with other things, and I'm starting to see cross contamination on marijuana where the drug dealers have the fentanyl and marijuana close together, and that just happens to contaminate it. So we haven't seen fatalities from it. We have seen reports of people testing positive for that were probably from using marijuana that had fentanyl on it, and it's quite potent these days.
Is it in the vapes too?
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know. Yeah. But it would not surprise me. And it's potent enough that some of these, like the fentanyl, you probably hear about, like, you have sort of morphine, and you talk about 10 and like 100 times potency over things like morphine and fentanyl. People say the only use of that is a basically anesthesia for an elephant to give you a sense of what it is. And we have seen some cases where you have like multiple fatalities in the same scene because they've taken what they might think is cocaine or heroin, and it has this potent fentanyl in it. They both just die so rapidly that no one was able to administer Narcan or call 911. So that's also a pattern that we've seen, is people dying at home because it happens so fast. They're not being found unconscious, and 911 is called. By the time they're found, they're deceased. So we've seen less individuals transported. Natural deaths by the causes. So heart disease and cancer still leading causes of death across the United States. So this pattern is very similar to other counties and other parts of the country. Neurologic deaths, stable but up a little bit. I anticipate over the next coming decades we'll see an increase of that as the population ages, and people die from dementias and complex neurodegenerative diseases. Which is a side effect of living longer. That's that we're treating and curing more cancers, heart disease. So that's why we'll eventually see this kind of shifting. Deaths by age group. This is like the quickest way to get an overall sense of what's going on in community. When you see that the deaths are shifted to the older population, that's telling you that people are dying of natural causes. When you see spikes in the younger populations that aren't dying from natural causes, that tells, or they're not dying from natural causes, so that tells you they're dying from accidental drug overdoses, homicides or suicide. And so again, this is starting to get. This is the one area. I mean, just not that many years ago, just like greater than 65, and so we just keep expanding out to that now 95 plus. So, So anyhow, that's a good snapshot. And then this is just a summary of our medical examiner activities. Year to year, it's quite stable. 137 investigations last year. We signed 34 death certificates. We went to 37 scenes, 20 postmortem examinations, and had 152 deaths reported to us. So it's just a quick overview of what we've been up to last year. So happy to deal with questions.
With regard to the fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's pretty common that it'll kill you.
Yes.
If a drug dealer is trying to maintain his clientele, why would you put fentanyl in there and kill it?
So that's a complex question, and it's a good question. So one is, in some scenarios, drug dealers will tolerate, if you will, maybe a fatality or two, because they now have demonstrated how potent their product is to tell them that it's better than what you might be able to get. The second thing is, it was another driver of this is a sheer, financial decision, because fentanyl is much less expensive and easier to manufacture, and it's much smaller quantities to transport. So it's much easier to move a small amount of fentanyl around compared to a much larger amount of, say, heroin, for example. So if you put some fentanyl in your heroin, now you're making more money, plus it's easier to transport it around. And then now what you're seeing is people have developed such a high tolerance that they're seeking out the fentanyl because of their tolerance.
Put it in there for a kick, I mean, don't they? An extra.
Yeah, and it's also like it takes, they put other sort of cutting agents in it. So if someone's paying X amount of dollars for what they consider like one dose, it costs them less to make that than if it was pure heroin, for example. But again, now more and more people, their tolerance is so high that they're actually seeking it out. And so what you see is not only do people die rapidly, but it might take, so fentanyl and other opioids have a relatively long half-life, so it takes a while for it to be metabolized. Narcan is a very quick acting drug, but it turns over quickly. So you'll see now people in the hospital and they have to have literally like a Narcan drip going in the hospital. And if they stop that, they go back to overdosing. So you can imagine trying to administer Narcan in a field that's going to, be very short acting, and maybe 1 or 2, 3 doses might be required. Yeah.
So if you look at history, like Colorado and the other states, I'm looking at this from a Minnesota point of view,
Yeah.
they've had big issues like in Colorado. They legalized marijuana, but now all these other things are coming in, so it's a bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, so starting to get a little bit beyond my level of expertise and knowledge, but from a medical examiner's position, marijuana, THC doesn't bind to parts of your brain that will kill you. So it's like not likely a cause of fatality. You will see in pediatric populations that people get quite sick and end up in the hospital, like kids and other individuals. What you do see are people that consume it at a high concentration and then go do things, right? They don't realize that they had so much, the concentration was so high in something that they've consumed. And then, when we talk to our toxicologists, another complicating factor is, it's not like alcohol where like this 1-to-1 ratio of what happened and, trying to like how that affects a person in general and a range and test for it. People can have it in their system and not be under the influence of it. So people are looking at all kinds of different types of metabolites. So it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly to determine if it's affecting somebody.
Thank you.
Yes, it's coming up pretty soon, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I've read reports where it's more common, maybe not in marijuana, but in the edibles side of it.
It's the edibles that are the main thing, because people don't realize like it's like one gummy bear might be the dose. But I mean, I don't know anyone who's ever had like a gummy bear, right? You know what I mean? And these things look like regular candy. And so that's the concern, is that like kids will get into this, and people are distributing these things now. We just saw a public health official who showed us a whole bunch of things. It's like, a dose of something might be like 2 bites of a cookie, right? I mean, I've thought I was going to eat half a chocolate chip cookie, but I don't know I've ever only eaten half of a chocolate chip cookie. And if you don't know that that's what it is, and it takes time for that to affect the person. And so they take a dose of it, they wait 10 or 15 minutes, they're not really feeling it. And so then they consume more. So, we worry more about the downstream actions, because sometimes people have like mental illness breaks and other complications from it. So it's not the drug itself that's doing it, but it's what the effects are that then lead up to other activity. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your much service, and
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's always a beautiful drive down here if I can stay out of the fog and not get stuck behind it.
and not hit a deer.
Get it here. Exactly.
Them deer.
Yo.
Yep, thank you.
A couple facts. Next, we have a 9:35 with MC IT, and I believe the gentleman is here for that report, so we're trying to stay on task here. We're doing pretty good so far. Good morning and welcome to us.
Well, thank you very much, and I will do my best to keep you on your schedule. I have a hard copy of this report. I think we may have sent it electronically, but if you'd rather have a hard copy, I'd certainly walk one of those around. I do that. Yep. My name's Garrett Claybaugh. I'm Executive Director of Minnesota Counties Government Trust, MCIT. We appreciate the opportunity to get to come and talk with you today. You probably think, and you can think of us as the county's insurer. We're actually a risk pool. And I wanted to spend just a little bit of time at the outset here before we dig into this report, just talking a little bit about what we do, how we're organized, and how we're different from insurance. So for starters, we're a joint powers organization. So we're organized, and actually we're founded by county governments in 1979 in response to difficulties that counties were having at that time finding workers' compensation insurance. Just was not available. Insurers pulled out of that market. So 25 counties at that time, back in 79, that created the Joint Powers Agreement that created MCIT. And of course, we're covering now 81 counties of the 87 counties in the state of Minnesota. So we're proud of that. And as a consequence of that, our board members are peers of yours. We have 9 board members who are county officials. And every year, every county who's a member gets an opportunity to cast a ballot at our annual meeting for those board seats that are available at that time. And so currently we've got 6 county commissioners, 2 county auditors, and then 1 county administrator on our board. And so again, they're your peers. They know county business, like county business, and very invested in the organization. As a government entity, we do business by the same rules that you do, by Minnesota statute and otherwise, and we're not for profit. So we're not also charging additional fees for commissions. We're not raising additional money to pay our investors. Our owners are you. And so we're looking to cover our costs. So part of our strategy is to take contributions from our members, but then invest those for the long term. Our actuary, for example, annually brings a report to our board to provide some information on how we're doing. And in that actuarial report looks at our workers' compensation injuries for the pool and goes out 70 years to try to project forward what those liabilities will be. So we're really in the long game here. We could certainly have young people, young employees who are injured, who have lifelong injury, and so our obligation to you is to take care of them in those cases where those claims need to be covered. So we do that, but our actuary then tells us whether we're raising enough money for that, and if we're raising more than we need based on contributions and our return on investment, then our board makes decisions to return dividends to members. And you've seen that from MCIT pretty steadily for the last 30 plus or minus years. So, and I'll talk a little bit about those dividends as well. So you're never going to see salespeople come out from us. Our interests are really aligned with yours. And I think that's one of the takeaway points I want to leave with you today. Everything that we do is really on your behalf, the training and support, financial management, all of that is really done for your benefit. And currently, and we have been for a number of years, we're fiscally sound, and again, proud of that as well. Let me turn your attention to the report. If you'll flip to page 2, I'm not certainly going to read this to you, but I want to hit a few highlights along the way, and then certainly we'll be open to questions you've got. In that dark blue box on page 2 references cyber coverage. About a year ago, we were notified by our cyber insurance carrier, Hartford Steam Boiler, that they were dropping us from coverage. And so they were dropping you as well, which they did nationwide. So they weren't just picking on Minnesota counties and our members. So we doubled down our staff and our board to try to figure out how we could respond to that challenge. And I'm proud to say we were able to plug that gap of coverage and really plug it in a way that I think our coverage now is improved. We're covering more, and we're taking more responsibility directly for that instead of shifting that onto insurer. We're insuring that, and then we use a reinsurer to help kind of be our financial backstop. So I'm proud of our staff for the quick work that they did and appreciative of our board for really putting our feet to the fire to make that happen. Again, for the benefit of all of our members. In the lower left-hand box, that gold box talks about dividends. Last year, these are last year's numbers, so 2022, the board made a decision to provide back $7 million to our members. That all came from the workers' compensation division. I'm sure as you've seen in your work, construction costs, property management costs, building construction costs are going up. Labor is short, supplies are short, inflation is high. And our property division has seen that as well. In addition, we've had weather events, more catastrophic weather events as well. So the board has taken a conservative position on property casualty and decided not to provide a dividend back to members, just being conservative with the funds that we have, hedging a little bit on those bets. But last year provided $7 million back, and you'll see there $49,248 was the amount of that dividend that came back to Houston County. This year, for 2023, you'll see a dividend from us later this year. That'll be $4 million, and that's all again from the Workers' Compensation Fund, and you'll be receiving a communication from us shortly about the amount that's coming to Houston County for that purpose. If you look at page 3,
Excuse me,
yes,
it gradually keeps going down.
yeah.
And I know you explained that. Is it because of the amount of claims that are extremely going up?
Yeah, it's a variety of factors, and let me talk about workers' compensation, that division as an example. Really, what we see on the side of workers' compensation is that risks are getting fewer. Our members are doing a better job providing safer work environments for employees. There's better equipment, more technology. Think about vehicles in the last 20 years. They've become safer as well, more costly to repair. But from a human injury standpoint, we've really seen improvements. And that's been true not only among our members, but really nationwide. And so our costs have been going down actually in workers' comp, and you'll see that in the rate information on page 2 as well. So, as our rates have gotten more focused and fine-tuned, as safety efforts and injuries have gotten better, the experience has improved as well. What we've needed from members for contributions has really been lower, and we're getting better at focusing those dollars. And so the need for carryover funds is also lessened as well. So if you look at over time dividends, for example, that we've paid back to our members for workers' compensation, that workers' compensation dividend number has systematically come down, and that's been both as a result of safer environments, fewer claims, lower losses, as well as in some cases better returns on investment. Not recently, but in the past we've had better returns on investment. And so we've been able to continue to provide dividends back, but there just hasn't been as much because we're getting more focused on what the right numbers are, and experience is getting steady. We don't see these wide swings in experience. Same has been true for property casualty, and those rates have come down over time as well, except in the last 3 years, things have been really very challenging with the pandemic. Like I said earlier, we've had more weather-related losses and more catastrophic losses. In our property book of business, we insure $7.5 billion in total insured value in property. So that's your buildings here in Houston County, as well as our other 80 members, highway garages, courthouses, historical societies, all of those. So we've got very large footprint in property. And as weather events have gotten more difficult and we've seen more damage and more catastrophic damage, and then add to that supply shortages, labor shortages, inflation, it's gotten a lot more difficult. We're very sound. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that we're also challenged in that way. We're very sound, fiscally sound, but we're also conservative. And the board has just seen fit in property, for example, even though rates have been pretty stable, that we're not providing a dividend for that reason alone. Great question.
So it's fair to say that our incidents are down, but when an incident occurs, it's more costly. That might be some other thing.
Right. I think, in fact, that's a great segue to the charts that I've got here on page 3. So let me just talk, and maybe let me talk about the bottom chart here. That's property and casualty. So property casualty includes property insurance. Again, that's $7.5 billion we have in total insured value for your buildings. This building, we insure that, as well as others across all 80 county members that we have. But it's also vehicles. We have 11,000 vehicles and fleets across the state that we provide insurance to. So, and it's all of the work around casualty liability as well. So property casualty, you'll see in this chart by frequency is just the number of claims we receive without regard to the amount of money. And then by severity, that part of the chart is how much money we're actually paying out. So this is like the total payment over a 5-year period for property and casualty. So this is 2018 to 2022. So by severity, for example, might not be surprising, auto claims are our highest category of payment, as well as the frequency of claims that we get with 11,000 vehicles. Again, this is 5 years worth of data. So we had 5,000 claims in the last 5 years for autos. And again, as autos have gotten more expensive, more technology, more costly to repair our auto severity, the amount of money paid out has been quite high as well. If you look at the property bar here as a comparison, the frequency of property claims that we have is relatively low if you compare that to auto. But if you look at the bar on severity for property, you'll see that that number is almost as large as it is for the auto claims. And that's because one building, if it's completely destroyed, is going to be millions of dollars to replace that building. And again, with additional weather events that we're seeing in our book of business, that's driving that. So does that answer the question that you've got?
Yep, thank you.
On the upper chart, I just want to camp on that for a minute as well. This is workers' compensation claims. Again, same 5-year period. Frequency, again, is just the number of claims. Severity is the total amount paid out. And here you can see by frequency and severity both that sheriffs and jail operations are our #1 category. And I think that stands to reason. Those folks are working in high demand, high consequence occupations, whether they're driving, whether they're interacting with people that are difficult to deal with. And so from a workers' compensation standpoint, this is a significant source of injuries for our pool. Highway is a second category of frequency. So these are, again, people who are out on the roads in bad weather conditions, doing very, very hard work. So that gives you a little bit of information, again, about both workers' comp and property casualty. Yes.
Just in looking at the workers' comp, the $20 million that you talked about over the 5 years, is that just the cost for that 5 years? Because I mean, work comp can run out for a lot of years. That's just what was paid out in the 5-year
Right.
period,
Right.
without taking into consideration. Okay.
Yeah, the future liabilities would be well in excess of that. As I mentioned, 70 years in some cases that our actuary is looking at. So, right, they'd be well in excess. The gold panel on the right there just talks about a little bit more detail about workers' compensation and one factor that we use in calculating our contribution rates that we charge to our members. We use something in that calculation called a mod factor. And basically what that does is it compares your experience as a member to the pool's experience overall. And so it's just the expected injuries. So among all the injuries that all of our members have among their employees, what would we expect your injury rate to be as compared to the pool? And so for the pool as a whole, mod factor is 1.0. If you're if your mod factor is below 1, then you're doing better than expected, and above 1, then you're doing a little worse. Opportunities for improvement. You can see your mod factor is just a hair. It's 9, what is that, 1/1000ths of a hair over 1. So you're doing very well. Opportunities for improvement are always there, which is a nice segue really to the back page. As I mentioned at the outset, our interests are really aligned with your interests. And so, our work is really focusing on helping you avoid risks, decrease the costs of those risks over time, And so we've got consultation services that we have available. We've got a small field staff that is available to work with your staff on safety committee work, other prevention related strategies. And so we're anxious to do that. And I know our staff have been here in the past, at least to provide those services. The box on the right, the awareness and prevention materials, we just stood up a new website. It's just very deep with a lot of materials. There's in the picture on that item, there's a table in there, and this is our cybersecurity assessment. This is something I handed out when I traveled the state last year at AMC district meetings. Cyber was a big problem. It continues to be a significant challenge. And I really encourage commissioners to open up a conversation with your administrator, with your IT staff about the challenges that they're facing in managing the IT infrastructure. There's a lot of bad guys out there who are trying to find ways to take government money and put that into their own bank accounts. And so there's not enough vigilance these days that we can be focused on. But we're trying to equip you all to have a conversation with your IT managers, your administrators, to find out what those challenges are in Houston County. What kinds of things are you seeing, and encouraging them to have that communication, not to make you an expert, but just to make you aware of what those issues are, so you can help provide some guidance as a board of commissioners. We have training programs that we're providing for both public officials as well as employees. And again, just a host of resources on our website, in person, doing webinars, online, hybrid presentations, all kinds of training. So we're here to be your assister in making your space as safe as it can be. So that's my presentation. I appreciate, again, the chance to come and talk, and be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
So you had a question, Craig? On the cybersecurity, you said MCIT itself plugged that hole, and then they had a backup.
We about a year ago, our Hartford Steam Boiler, who was
Right.
our insurer, put us on notice that beginning January 1, 2023, they were going to drop us from their book of business. It's really reflective of this challenge in governments across the country. So we were not the only organization that was targeted in that way, just dropping coverage. We stepped back into that and said, what can we do to, beginning January 23, put coverage back into place for our members, and did that successfully. So we developed a program that is really provides more coverage than the earlier program with Hartford Steam Boiler. And we've done that through a reinsurer called Counties Reinsurance Limited, which is a national organization to assist us in doing that. So we're really pleased to be able to do that. And I think now, your challenge and our challenge will be, what more can we do to really provide resources to assist you and, battening down those hatches, tightening those systems so that we can prevent losses in that area.
You read about situations all the time where they get taken advantage of with ransomware and
Right. Yeah, misdirected payments, I think oftentimes too, is a significant challenge for governments. In my role, and I've had a 30-year career in government prior to my coming to MCIT. I've seen, people want to get into your checkbook organizationally, and so you're at risk as county commissioners. But those bad guys are getting crafty in terms of fashioning emails. It's hard to know when they're communicating with you that they are masquerading maybe as a staff member or some other trusted advisor that you have, and asking for you to intercede and redirect a payment. One of the challenges that we see occasionally too is someone will email an accounting staff member for the county, for example, and say, I'm pretending to be this highway contractor, and because your bills are published, anybody can know who you're doing business with, how much payments they're receiving. And so anybody could pick that up, communicate with your accounting staff and say, hey, by the way, I'm company XYZ that's under your contract, and we're having a change in our bank account. And instead of sending it to this place through electronic funds transfer, you need to send it to another place. And they can come off looking very much like a legitimate organization that you do business with, unless there's a little more due diligence to try to uncover and verify that and other protections that are in place. That's how occasionally we see monies lost. So it takes an all hands on deck approach really to be additionally vigilant and wise. And we talk about this as much as technology is important. Our biggest risk here is people. And that really comes down to training and vigilance, how we interact with those systems, who we trust, who we don't, who we ask for additional verification from. So something we always have to be careful of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much.
Keep the dividends coming. Okay, moving on to our 9:45 Houston County Historical Society presentation. We apologize for tardiness, but come on up and fill us in on what's going on. Historical. We're doing pretty good. We apologize for a little delay. It's hard to determine length of things. Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I want to thank you for continuing your support of the Historical Society. We have been upgrading our we're doing restoration on Sheldon Presbyterian Church. So far, we've got a new roof. Our goal is to try and get roofs on these buildings that will last for a long, long time. And we upgraded a lot of electricity this last year because of some places that were poor service. So anyway, we're continuing to recover from the COVID closing and things, and we're getting back to more normal, but we certainly need more volunteers where it's hard to get it all done. And we're still working on getting our parking lot paved. And we have new displays going up for the Fair Week and for the year. Especially there's a great one that's going to be especially fun for the kids. Luann Hummel has generously loaned us her peanuts collection, and it's hundreds of items. And I think it'll be really fun to do. It's amazing. Been collecting for over 30 years. So, and then we're having a special program by our new person that's taking over the restoration of our glass negative, John Rolfman. He's going to present a program on our glass negatives and how we're restoring them and taking care of them. And then we're having a wonderful display of quilts, special program on that. And our new acquisitions, and I think it'll be an exciting display. We're having and the quilt display is going to be a bed with many quilts on, and they'll present a program by turning them up, and I think the ladies will really enjoy that. No, go ahead. So what kind of questions can we take from you?
I guess I will say, I thought you had more to do. Just, she mentioned looking for more volunteers, and I think that's a sign of how active and busy we are, just that we need more people to do all the things that we're doing. And the pollen glass negatives thing, I think is very exciting, and there's a lot of people that always ask about that, and it's thousands of glass negatives, and so they've been cleaning them and scanning them, and so that will be part of what's going to be featured in this presentation that they're going to have during the fair.
So when you do that, so you got the glass negative, you have a way of placing it on something that you can show what the picture is. mean, the negative's this big, you gotta wanna blow it up.
Some negatives are, the glass ones are this big or 8 by 10 type, but they scan it. And it gets transferred to the computer. And so then that's what's gonna be used for the display is that's gonna run through.
You can scroll
scan.
through and.
Yep.
Okay.
And we need help identifying a lot of them. We do have the records, the ledgers that they had, and they have numbers, but of course, not all the information is there.
I think it goes back a long way.
Yeah, and some of it was damaged, it was in the attic or at the house for many years. And then they used some of the glass negatives during the war, didn't they? So some of them were destroyed, so we don't have a complete collection, but they used the material.
Everything that's available.
Well, it can be a challenge, I can imagine, because we're all getting older to identify those. So,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
you guys,
Well,
it's true,
I know.
but,
Yeah.
you have to tell everybody.
Well, a lot of, we get a lot of old photographs and they're not identified. And for example, I just found an old photo album up at the Cricket Quarter here, and there was 1 or 2 that were identified, but most of them were not. So I purchased it and just thought, well, I'm gonna just see where this goes. And on the back of one of them, it did have the name, and it happened to be Johnson. So how many Johnsons are there? But then it gave the town. I could see it had the township and the section number that they lived in. So that was really a help in locating which Johnson it was. So there's a lot of little things that we can look at, but please identify all your photographs because it's hard going back. and
Yep.
Filling that in.
I think most people think because they know them now, but they don't think about the future that people don't know them.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem. And I think we're all guilty of not getting them identified as quickly as we should. So, but we had a nice amount of visitors last year, over 25 states, and so we're pleased that we're getting back to more normal,
For a new normal, I guess.
whatever normal is.
So the new roofs that you're putting on, are they historically similar or are you using more modern material?
Historically similar, or are they modern?
So what,
The roofs that were, the church we put on a raised,
yeah,
steel. So
Steel.
that's
It's
kind
just-
of an old, yeah,
That's the
look,
appearance.
yeah.
Okay.
And so that was just put on the church. The school, we had shingles that were, that they looked old, but they're actually metal.
and have quite a long life.
The life expectancy is a big thing, that lasts a long time.
Yeah.
On our new museum edition, we put on shingles that have a life of 50 years.
The log house is still shakes.
Yeah, that needs to be kept as shake. Otherwise, and in the future, we're going to have to do originally, the church or the store in Heights, and that has a rubber roof, but it has been a wonderful roof. It's been on over 25 years now, and we just had repairs done on it. They said they would be good for maybe 5 more years, so we're really happy. We had so much problems with that roof before. So,
Yeah, and with the church, then that's the first thing we've been able to do. We're waiting for our contractor to have rainy days that they can work in there. And of course, that hasn't happened, but, that's what they're gonna be doing on rainy days, is ripping out the inside and getting it back to more original condition.
I was looking at your financial statements here. It looks like the donations have increased quite a bit over the last couple of years here. That's
yeah, we.
74,000.
a couple of
Yes,
states.
Good.
From the states, yeah.
Do you think those are sort of for designated projects or are they just the donations in general?
We're putting all those into our endowment fund, but we can dip into it if we have to, but we need to have a solid basis in perpetuity of the museum so that it can keep going.
We did have one donation that would specifically go to the church, so sometimes that does happen, but
Well, the endowment fund has to be benefiting from the interest rates that they're
Yeah.
Compared to what it was.
Yep.
Okay,
So you mentioned before where you're always in need of volunteers to help sort through the donations. So your donations, do you find that it's increasing? People wanted to donate stuff to you. Do you ever turn them away or turn some down?
Yeah, we do see that's about donations if we ever turn them down.
I mean, as far as our historical donations, not money. I'm talking.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We, yeah, we do turn down once if we've got a duplicate one, or if
Okay.
it just doesn't fit wasn't from Houston County.
All right.
Or, so we're trying to limit it that way, but, yeah, it's hard. People don't want to throw it away, but they don't know what to do with it. So.
And we were out of storage.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, storage is an issue with some of that, that
Yeah.
you wanna,
yeah,
Yeah, we have to be very careful that we don't take big things that we already have.
Mhm.
Janine Hush, one of our board members, and some volunteers have been working on our storage room, getting it organized, so, yeah, we can find things.
Yep.
Once we get them, have a place to put them.
Well, organizing everything that you have is a big job in itself.
Yeah, and the boxes, boxes that are historic, that need to be archival are very expensive.
And you have a lot of people that come in and do genealogy too.
Yeah, and a lot of it's through emails, so we're, that takes volunteers again to try to look up stuff to reply to that, but yeah. But yeah, we do have people come in person, search in newspapers and, some of the newspapers are online, but not all of the county newspapers are.
The papers are on like a microfiche. and-
Yeah.
I always enjoy in the Fillmore County Journal, there's a section that he
Yeah.
writes about historical stuff, and that's
Yeah,
always interesting. You always learn something new.
Yeah, spend a lot of time at our.
And a couple of years ago, we received a very important Native American collection. That was a lifelong collection of a Houston County resident. And you're in the museum, be sure you look at it.
Yeah,
And that was all things that were found in Houston County, too, for
yeah,
the most part,
they were all things found in Houston County.
Not
all
not
of them.
some of them, but
for the most.
it's a nice representation.
Yeah, we have a very, very beautiful collection, a Native American.
And we've been having some talks on it. Paul Whiskey's been doing. Last year, he did our annual meeting and talked about our Native American artifacts. So,
This spring he did the dairy group, didn't he?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's just written a book on the Winnebago baskets, which was quite a thing in the colonies.
Yeah, just recently they had something at the Nature Center about for historical or artifacts for Native American stuff, and my mother-in-law has one that's been passed down through her family, and they had it valued and everything, and it was quite interesting. This, but and Paul was involved with that too, and Brian Lee helped organize that, I think. So
Yeah, Paul is a great resource.
yeah. Well, thank you for what you guys do.
Yeah, very good. Keep up the good work. Great report.
Thank you for seeing us. And
Come to see us at the fair.
Well, enough.
sorry, I have a hearing problem, so.
That's fine. That's what I do too.
We're all gonna get. Not all of us are gonna raise our hand.
moving on to other things, our consent agenda. On our consent agenda, we have a total of 9 things. Seem to be a lot of retirements, reassignments, recognition, search for. Anything that's highlight or feeling of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Question.
Discussion now.
Yes.
Go ahead, Bob.
With regard to the with regard to the item number 2, that Jennifer Brichter's assignment, technical clerk. Personnel has looked at that?
That is just for a temporary increase during fair time, as happens every year. And so
It's not an annual full-time.
this is just for the temporary period through the fair time. It's not for what we discussed at last week's workshop. You can for the next year's budget,
Okay.
but it's
But this year, it's going just that short period.
right.
Next year, it's gonna be looked at. Okay.
That'll be coming up and they'll be in discussion for next year's budget. And also Lisa from Extension will be here on the 15th of August to do a presentation for justification.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
That'll be for budget purposes.
And it was also, we had a personnel meeting yesterday and it was discussed that this is something that we do every year, but it's not in the budget, so it should be. But we'll see how, if things change where she gets increased anyway, it wouldn't be a real point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carry. Moving on to action item. Number one is consider adopting the updated comprehensive land use plan by ordinance. We had a public hearing this morning. There was a planning commission before that.
I'll make a motion to approve the updated comprehensive land use plan by the ordinance.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, on the basis that, it's a well-written plan. A lot of involvement by the community. It's understandable and easy to follow, and it's a great basis for the county ordinances that we have. So it's something that we can use to lead and work into the existing ordinances to make improvements in that regard. So I think it's a great, and it's a well-needed comprehensive land.
For the update, right?
Well, it's something that's required by statute that we need to do to update every 10 years.
That's why it's well needed.
Right, and we're overdue, so.
Like Bob said, gives us a good basis for planning commission to look forward, and I think that helps take care of a lot of. It was just cleaned up a few things too. Where I think it'd be very useful when we get it all done.
Well, if I could, I'd like to just read some of the goals that we wanted to achieve. And, our number one goal is to preserve commercial agriculture as an essential long-term permanent land use in the county. And I think that is stressed in this county plan. And that's not going to change. And the second is to protect major natural resources areas included of the county in the floodplains, wetlands, trout streams, steep bluffs, hardwood forests. So that serves as a basis for recreation and logging. And also, the local use of aggregate materials such as rock, sand, whatever. It is recognized as a valuable resource. And the third one is to locate urban development near major cities where services can be easily provided and extended. That's a reasonable thing we need to do to follow well-planned from the cities, well-planned expansions that could provide services to those expansions. And also to implement economic development and that reflect the values and supports agriculture and is compatible with agriculture in the county. So I think all in all, this whole plan is well thought out. We went over a lot of stuff and I think it reflects what our goals that we wanted to do. So.
And Evan is still with us here. I want to thank Evan and his crew for their leadership and getting us through the steps needed to do it. And he must have left the green here, so I think it's a good plan to go forward with. So any further discussion?
Well, and also at the end of it here, it has a table for implementation of action. So if we feel that
you know, in order to follow the comp plan, you know, we have the ordinance to do that, so it lays out the process that we need to go through to change ordinances to conform with the comp plan, so it's spelled out in that chapter
Great
5.
detail. Okay, any further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. Carry. Got the new plan done. Good year's work done. Number 2 is consider approving an estimate from Nowling for the amount of $19,297.50 for the purchase of 33 upgraded pole pads, sleds, and transport cases with an additional 3 new pole pads included printers, cords, transport cases, and first-year lease. And Don or Polly, go ahead.
All right, good morning, commissioners. So, yep, it is for 19,297.50. And the only we at this time would have had to upgrade it. We have to upgrade our pole pads. They're no longer we would no longer be able to use them for the 2024 election because of the current upgrades that they have now. So we would get just the new pads for the 33. And then we'd also have the 3 new ones for the precincts who wanted to have a couple additional pole pads, which we were going to who they go to. We were going to add one to Caledonia P1, add one to Houston City, and add one to La Crescent P2. And with that, we thought we'd have sufficient, you know, pole pads for the cities during the 2024 election when it's real busy, and they would have we try not to go over 500 voters to a pole pad, but some have like 690 probably.
Yes.
Something like that.
So we're
I
gonna.
mean, it's varied, but we try to kind of keep it at, you know, that's how we kind of base our needs of the pole pad. Holly, did you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, other than the only precinct of our 27 precincts that don't use a poll pad currently is Jefferson Township, and that's based on the number of registered voters. So cost wise, it probably wouldn't pay to get one for them. So all of the other 26 have poll pads, and a couple of those have duplicates now. So
Now to clarify, there are some funding that came down the line from the state, so our out-of-pocket amount is 12,000 something.
Correct. We did get 6,357.91 to be exact last week, and we will get that probably right around the same amount each year, based on the numbers for all the different counties. But we can pretty much count on that for next year as well. And we have the option to purchase them this year, or we've been told that we can actually order them and we have this price and we'll just hold it until 24 if we want to pay for them in 24. We don't really necessarily need to have them this year because, you know, we won't use them for any elections, but we figured it might be nice for Polly to have a little time to get them all, you know, prepared and everything that she needs to do before it gets to be real busy. But, you know, the PNP will be in March of 2024 and then things will start rolling. So, you know, I guess if she planned it out, I mean, they could get it done, but it might be nice just to buy them and have them here for 23, you know. And there is a maintenance fee on these pole pads. Polly, do you want to explain how that works?
sure. Currently, of the 33 poll pads, we're charged $125 per poll pad per year. So that's been totaling $4,125. I was told that starting in 2024, the maintenance fee per poll pad is going to go up to $140. So if the 33 poll pads at $140 would bump it to $4,620. And then, of course, if we add 3 more to that with our new poll pads, that would give us a grand total of $5,040 starting in 2024.
And that's in every year.
Every year.
What's the lifespan of the new pole pad? Do they give you a projection?
7 years is what they, basically, that's the typical number that they,
So is that 7 years from when we receive them? So like
Yes.
if we wait till 2024, that's when the 7 will kick in, or if we get them?
it's probably gonna be the same version.
Okay,
So what they're telling us is if we get these now with this new latest and greatest version, they should be good through 2030 or 2030. Yeah.
well. I don't know, I have, these pole pads replace general roster. And, I just feel that the expense of the pole pads itself and then the yearly maintenance fee. I know. It makes it easier for you guys to calculate and tabulate all that stuff. But, you know, I've argued before where if you hire 67-day employees, that extra, that's considerably cheaper than what it is to cost to maintain and purchase these, but I understand maybe some of the constituents like them. Precincts like them that use them, so I guess I'm on the fence.
The only fence I'm on is whether or not we should do it this year, do it next year. It's not in this year's budget, correct? If we do it next year, we can budget for it accordingly.
You have a good point, Commissioner, and
That's-
that is
that's the
true.
only reason I'm on the fence.
And,
If the
and
pole parts are necessary, I think it's a.
I mean-
Technology is what it is, so.
And, you know, we could, they'll definitely hold this price, so it's totally up
it's-
to you.
For sure, they'll hold it.
Mhm.
Let's see, they submitted this pricing back in April of this year. And if they'll hold it till after the first of the year,
I did just send an email to them last night confirming that, just so I could have it in writing. And they definitely said, yeah, they would hold this price as long as we use this quote, signed it, and then request that it be held until 2024.
So all the townships use the pole pads pretty much?
Except for Jefferson.
Except for them.
I
It's
think
not-
they said, didn't they say it'd take 2 weeks? To get them, something like that, you know,
There's no
after
time
we,
span.
after the first of the year, they would ship them out, within like 2 weeks. So not like we'll have to wait for 3 months or anything like that.
Well, we don't, elections in fall, so we can just well wait till 24. I think. And budget accordingly. Yeah.
But I do feel that if we don't continue with pole pads, it will be pretty much going backwards, and I don't know if that's a good thing either, you know. It does help in a lot of ways for, like the back end when we do get when the election results back and we're uploading the voter information, plus I think the counties, or not the counties, the cities and townships are finding that they're getting used to them because they're kind of walking them through some of these challengers and some of these things that they sometimes, you know, are maybe missteps, but with this, they can't miss a step because they won't let you go on until you answer all the questions. So it helps.
Well, I
that way
think
too.
it's, everybody in the townships like using them, so I don't know why we should keep on. I would think we just. Do we need to order them now or wait till 24? Question here that I'll ask then is, this is consider approving an estimate from No Inc. for the $19,297 for the purchase of 33 upgraded pole pads, sleds transport. And the additional 3 pole pads. Do we make a motion to approve it with the notation for acquisition in 2024? Or do we gotta wait to 2024?
No,
I would
you
definitely,
gotta prove it today in order to
Yeah,
get that.
so we can
fixed.
get it ordered right away. I mean,
If you
we can
want
get
to
the
put
order.
it in your motion to wait till 2024, you could do that.
That'll be my motion that I move to approve the purchase of the 33 upgraded pole pad sleds transport cases with the additional 3 new pole pads for purchase in 2024.
good motion. Is there a second?
I'll do that. A second. Bob's still on the line. We haven't heard one word.
He's been pretty quiet up there.
He's actually voting, so he must just be listening in.
Okay, but yeah, so it's the understanding is that we're agreeing to purchase them, but not to do it till after the first of the year. Okay, so everybody's on the same page. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. You voted yes. Okay, thank you. That passed.
Thank you.
Robert just said yes.
said yes, I didn't
hear
anything.
Okay,
I muted so you wouldn't get any feedback, so
all right.
Bob, have you been voting all along?
I have. I've been trying to
Okay.
hit the space bar, but I'm gonna have to have Andy take a look at it because I'm not sure that that feature is working.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
before you go down, on the package, I'm seeing a review of the TIF for
Caledonia.
strictly information. There's no
Strictly information.
strictly information. So
Yep.
that there's for that. All right, because I saw it and I wanted to clarify what it was about.
Yep.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
And then
Might stay there, Bob. You're next.
moving on to number 3, we're going to look at Polly Himmerline being appointed as the interim auditor treasurer in the C-53, step 1, effective of July 31st, 2023, to fulfill the duties of the office or the balance of the elected term. And we went through the process here a couple of weeks ago. We did the interviews and this candidate came out on top. It's great. And we need to make it official.
Make a motion
It's
to approve the appointing of Polly Haberland as the interim auditor treasurer. C-53, step 1.
very good. Is there a second
I'll second that.
for the discussion? Needed? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think we have a chirp over there, so I'm not, aye. All against, say nay. Very good. Welcome. Congratulations. Brad.
Thank you.
Thank
Number 4 was pulled because of the possibility of another vote coming in, so we're gonna do that maybe next week or so. Number 5, consider approving purchase of a new south boat dock at Wildcat Park. We got, I believe it came in a separate email yesterday. Fill it in there. Fine.
Yeah, I'll apologize for not getting these quotes over to you earlier. We were waiting on getting second quote in, so we went out, we tried to get quotes to get the boat dock on the south end down at Wildcat Park is taking on water, so it's slowly sinking. It's no longer floating and functional. I believe the last time I saw it, it had probably about the first 6-7 feet was underwater, so it's really not staying up, so it needs to be replaced. We've been trying to get multiple quotes to get 6 foot wide by 30 foot long dock along with the ramp to get onto the dock from shore. So Cooler Region Docks submitted a quote to us as we requested. It is a 6 foot wide, 30 foot long. We asked for a 15 foot ramp. Their quote was for a 16 foot wide ramp. They have 4 pipe augers to help hold it in place. Total quote from them was $10,968.84. The second quote came in yesterday, or actually came in late on Friday. That quote is actually for a 5 foot wide dock. It does not have the pipe augers. Total cost for that quote was $9,681.74. So that second quote is for roughly or just under $1,300 less, but it's a 1 foot narrower dock. That 6 foot dock that we've have up by the boat landing has been well received, having that extra width It's just nice when you're, carrying coolers, carrying fishing gear, coming off with that extra width on that dock. And then the pipe augers, if you look at from the Cooler Region dock quote, that was $444 just for that one item. So that makes up some of that cost difference. And then this also has a 12-foot 8-inch ramp for the lower price quote. That longer ramp does make a difference when you're having that river stage fluctuate. So it's not quite as steep when you're going up and down that ramp. So we kind of have two options here before us. We did not get a quote from anyone else. We attempted to get other quotes. I'm sure we could probably go back to Cooler Region Docks and ask them if they wanted to get us a quote for a 5-foot wide dock. If we wanted a 5-foot wide. But based on the feedback we've received in the past, my recommendation today is to go with the more expensive dock that's 6-foot wide. And
Better for handicap.
yeah, it's better for handicap, better for getting on, better for carrying stuff. It's what we requested, and that is also the same company we purchased the other dock from, and they've had good service and stuff when we needed any parts and assistance. So if you don't want to approve that today, so I can always go back to and get additional quotes for a 5-foot.
I think we should stay with the more expensive one because it's 6 foot, it's got better ramp. And the other one up above is 6 foot, everybody loves that, so.
The 6 foot would be a lot more stable than a 5-foot.
Yes.
Does this lacrosse? This goes lacrosse dock, do they have an opportunity to bid a 6-footer or do they not have it in their supply?
That is what we requested.
You did.
I will say that we have the request we got from the Cooler Region dock, we've been sitting on that one for weeks waiting to get a second quote in. That second quote was supposed to be coming in sooner. We couldn't get it. We finally got it last minute. So it's one of those things, how much longer we want to keep waiting. Do we want to get another opportunity and delay this? At this point, I don't. We wanted to keep waiting. I mean, how long do we really want to wait to get quotes?
I think we need to get it in.
And we have a crew that installs it. I speed them over, it's no installation. And we asked for a 6-foot bid,
Yes,
so, and they came in less, so
correct.
feeling of the board.
I think we gotta have it, I mean, it's sitting underwater half of it right now.
Need to replace it, and I'd like to comment that Mr. Schultz commented that 6-foot wide is more stable. And that's what we asked for. We went back for another bid, it just delays it, and there we go. So that's a motion, Greg.
I'll make a motion that we,
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now we hear you, good. We have a motion made and seconded to authorize the purchase from Cooley Docks 10-9. Yeah, 10,900 something, okay. Further discussion.
I think there's some funding that we might be able to get to help out on that. Isn't there that we talked to about the guy in the corner? I said that there's maybe some funding we can find.
Not for this stock. This will be local money.
This would be local for this dock.
This would be out of the Wildcat Fund, and they would,
Correct.
the general fund would pay for Wildcat owes it back.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Motion made and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you.
Okay,
As long as we got you here, Brian, on the Wildcat, what's your opinion of sending our excavator out in that water and trying to drag in that sand back? What happens if we blow an oil hose out there and we throw 50 gallons of fluid out into the river?
I think the odds of blowing. I think the odds of blowing a line at that point would be pretty low. The bigger issue is, you know, you don't want to bring a track equipment out there too far into the water. And I think our reach from our arm is probably a little bit shorter than what we'd like to have. So the reason why that question was asked is when we had a Wildcat Parks Committee meeting down there, I met with the Corps. So we slowly have been losing that shoreline, eroding back into the park. Met with the Army Corps and their suggestion, assuming that we can get the permits from the DNR and a different division or branch within the Army Corps, is to reach out into the Mississippi and pull some of the sediment. Might have some muck on the top, but if you take that muck off, the sand that's underneath it, and restore the shoreline just from pulling stuff back. I think it's definitely feasible as a way to do it. The issue is our excavators a little bit, I think, on the small side with the reach and the bucket size, which probably is not gonna be as cost effective as if the Corps can dredge and offload their barge material right off to the side of the within the park, and we just move it around with our front end loader and push it around with the dozer. Or we, you know, possibly hire someone out that has a longer reach on their backhoe with a bucket capacity that's double or triple the capacity of our buckets. So could we do it? Yes. But might be a better way to do it than us.
That'd be cheaper to haul.
So
Robert, do we know when the Corps is gonna be dredging in that area? It could be a long time before they do.
yeah, so they dredge almost every year. So the Mississippi, what we've been told in the past, that they dredge out 2 feet of material every 2 years. But usually they're by Wildcat almost every year. They're either a little bit upriver, a little bit downriver. It's the type of equipment that they're going to be using to dredge it. They probably don't want to do the hydraulic dredging where they pump it over, pipe it over. Said that's probably not the best way to dredge it, to put that sand on the shoreline for us. The better way is probably to when they have the actual manual dredging, excavating, loading it onto a barge and
the
dump
Army
it
Corps
off.
said
So
they would do that.
they were gonna look at that. They were gonna ask the question, see if they can do it. They think they might be in that area just south of the park here soon.
Next month. I thought
They just need to see if they can get their barge into a location at the park, you know, because it gets shallower along that shoreline, but you know, said, you know, they might have one location or 2 locations that they can get in to drop it off. So they are going to look at that. So that's definitely an option. Another option is to go over just up the road, take sand from that pile and haul it down, short haul with our dump trucks. The bigger issue would become getting approval from the Minnesota DNR and the Army Corps for putting fill in a floodplain.
Really? Couple loads of sand they're gonna.
Well,
They might not. They might.
I'm trying to get a meeting set up. I already, you know, sent out an email to both the DNR and to the permitting side of the Army Corps. See what they say. Anything, if you add fill within a floodplain, like the Mississippi, you need to do calculations to show that you're not increasing the water level during a 100-year runoff event more than 0.01 feet. Essentially,
But you need to pull it from the river to fill that way.
Yeah.
You don't need a permit for that.
But the calculations though is that, you know, you're pulling sediment out that sediment's not there, it's full of water, it's full of water.
Capacity.
It's full of water, so you're really not adding capacity, you're taking it away when you start adding material into something that's currently above the existing normal flow. So we will see what the calculations show. We'll see if they make us do that for this. It's such a minor amount of fill on material that's been washed away, eroding. We've had pictures showing that the USGS gauge, their conduit line used to be buried. It was exposed this spring. You can see how that shoreline's been eroding. So you're trying to restore it back to what it was. So I don't know what they're going to say on the permitting side. That's why I'm trying to get a meeting with them down there.
This is gonna be done during the season.
No, we'll try to do it outside the season. Now, depending on if it's, you know, if they bring a sand pile over during the camping season, yeah, there might need to have a pile. So it's a factor we need to consider. Do we want to do it or do we just hauling.
They come.
Just from the dock. So.
It's the majority of the shoreline. From the upper boat launch, all the way down to the fishing pier. No, correct, not north of the main boat launch.
And that would that end like at the fishing pond, the fishing
Yep.
platform?
Yep.
It's just to put sand along the shoreline, slope it back on.
To try and have a more of a beach.
Yeah,
effect
so-
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the next time it floods, it's going.
It absolutely is gonna wash back into the river, and that's where, you know, the core individual that was down there, you know, like I said, you're pulling out sand that's eroded in the river, it's gonna go back in the river, but because it's
My
a
concern is that when
public
you
park, it's,
my concern is when you do that, you're gonna pull in mud. And that's gonna make a mess.
yep, so some of that is, we do expect there's gonna be some layer of muck that you're gonna need to probably take that muck off first, and you wanna make sure you pull sand up onto the shore and not
Okay.
muck that's gonna create a mess, so. We do not walk out there in the water, to start digging holes to see what we have out.
The
there,
only
so,
way to guarantee what you're gonna get is to truck it from a big pile up.
Yeah, I mean, most of it is gonna
What you
be,
get on their barge or whatever they're using. It's gonna be a blend, they're not gonna separate the mud from the good sand.
So there's
well,
good,
most of the stuff when they start dredging, I mean, that stuff that's sitting in the piles, you know, if you look at Crater Island or on the shore, I mean, that's all dredge sand that came right out of Mississippi. I mean, it's gonna be that same way along that shoreline. You just don't know how much muck is on top of it. Is it a couple inches or is it 6 inches? There are some vegetation starting to grow out in front of the park now in the water. And that's probably because it's filled in with silt and other muck that we don't want on the shoreline. But getting that stuff out of there would be beneficial to the park too.
up at the big pile, there's different. When they're dredging, it seems like there'll be places where they'll have what we call dirty sand, and then there'll be more clean sand because of. They got the muck off, that went over on the first couple of barge loads, and then the next ones will be. So when they want to get sand for septic system, they get clean, and if it's just for fill, you take the dirty. So. But yeah, that's sometimes gets separated, but you're right, there's some that's pretty dirty too.
So is that clean sand really clean or is it? I mean, as we talked about. All in.
We call a lot of it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same sand that you have on the shoreline down there right now. So is it clean? I mean,
I guess what I'm asking, Brian, is could we haul in some really nice sand?
we could haul, I mean, you can always screen sand, you can haul in better sand than what you get over there, but that sand's not bad. The disadvantage is, yeah, you have really nice sand for 1 year. The next spring, when the water comes back up to flooding,
It's gonna go away. It's something.
it's gonna get covered with stuff, it's gonna get washed away. And if you look at when the high water hit this spring, all of the campsites, when you first go into the park and you turn right to go down to the south end, all those sites between that, the shelter and the roadway, they were all underwater. And that roadway was, the paved entrance road was under about 2.5 feet of water. And the gravel road was underwater by a few inches. So for anything along that shoreline that is sand currently, is under a few feet of water every spring. So it's gonna get covered up.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. Go ahead, Robert.
I was gonna say, just see what they say. I mean,
Yeah, so at this point, it's gonna be, yeah, so I'm gonna approach the DNR and the Corps for permitting kind of on two fronts. One is, will they let us restore that shoreline back where it was? What are the restrictions for that? Are they gonna require that we riprap it or something other than, can we leave it sand? We want it to be more sand, even though, it's gonna wash away. And then secondly, can we remove that material from out in the water, can we dredge that material out? So if we can grade, will we? Maybe, maybe not. So start there.
Okay, well, maybe they'll come in and fill it full for us. I'll do nothing. I don't know yet.
They can get the sand permits a lot easier than us sometimes, because it's their bailiwick and so on. Now, I'm just gonna go off on a slight, for discussion, and usually part at the end here. Did you feel they were open, the gentleman from the Corps, he said, send it in, but didn't sound too bad, permitting is the one that makes the final decision. I felt it was a good meeting with, Mr. Berg.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin Burke's been great to work with over the years. Dealt with him for a long time, or worked with him for a long time down there. He is definitely open and willing, whatever we want. He will work with us, and yes, he thinks that's a great idea.
I thought he was very good
Working
at-
with the permitting person at, he's also out of the Crescent office. He's really good to work with too. So I really don't think that the Corps is gonna be causing too many issues on the permitting side.
Seemed pretty open, I thought, for
But
some
it's,
of the suggestions we had.
yep, and then I'm not sure if there's any, depending on the quantity, if there's any permitting that we need from our own county zoning. And then there's also the DNR, Minnesota DNR permitting, so it's a variety of individuals that can, put restrictions in place or stop this from happening, so. Overall, I think, yeah, the one we met with, I mean, as far as he's concerned, we can go out there tomorrow and
Yeah,
restore the
he
shoulder.
was open to a lot of suggestions, so I thought very good for us.
I don't think the Corps is gonna be our problem. I think it's the DNR, if anything.
I guess we can let you go now, but
Thank
I
you,
thought
Rob.
I'd get your input as to what you felt.
Yep.
Oh, well, it went, I thought it went very well.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. Number 6. Consider accepting donation from Brownsville VFW in amount of $200 to Veteran Service Office to use as any veterans needs.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry. That takes care of the action items. Discussion time. Most of the meeting we had with the Corps last week, it was good to see and how open he was. Like the improvements. Not much else going on. I attended the Crescent City Council last night. They had a long discussion. I missed part of it at the very beginning of the meeting about the cannabis law and what they're gonna do as far as where they're gonna allow it, like in the public parks and so on. So I advise that we're working on some moratorium ideas, not finalized yet, but that we're looking into something on a countywide. That's all I told them. And that was the highlights of that. And then we had finance this morning. Not much going on. I guess the audits are starting. Budgets are supposedly coming in from the different departments to be prepared. Let's see, there was one mention about the pole pads that came from budget meeting. Oh, Bank of the West. By the end of the week should be no longer on in our books, they're finalizing that, I guess.
The transition will be completed.
That's a good way to say it, except. And that's about it. Greg.
Well, at the Wildcat meeting, you kind of talked about that. We discussed that here. I got a zoning meeting on Thursday night. Might get a little wild, who knows? Board of Adjustment. So we have a planning commission one and the Board of Adjustment has one. They got the top. The Board of Adjustment. And then I guess the only other thing I got is I was contacted by Chuck Gavin. He's maybe thinking about maybe talking to us again about doing the trees. out there, because last weekend there was some people out there that had a kind of a reunion and a picnic out there at the airport. I don't know much about it, but anyhow, those people were all wandering down into his building site. When he went out there at 5 o'clock, he caught a bunch of them down in there looking in the buildings, so I think we maybe gotta put a fence around.
Fence around what?
Where we have the two, we wanna get 2 acres on an easement.
Oh,
And we're working on that, and some of the people, now they've been walking down into his area from the airport. They had a picnic or kind of a little reunion out there, I guess. I don't know who it was or whatever. I guess it don't matter.
Airport people did?
Yeah, the airport people were walking down and looking in the buildings.
Hmm.
But so it's close.
The Red Baron Club or whatever?
I don't know who had the picnic. I can't tell you that. I don't know. That could be anybody, I guess. So and then I guess once we get with Chuck and maybe get some more ideas on how we want to handle that, I guess we'll get it done when we can.
Kind of waiting for the FAA to tell us what trees they have to come down.
Yeah. They come up with a different plan about every other day. don't they? Okay. We would have this deal done if we'd went with the first plan that they started out with. It didn't work. That's about all I got, I guess.
all right. Robert,
Well, with regard to what I've been up to, last Friday was one of the first children meetings. And that is coming together. There's a picnic coming up for a providers picnic coming up pretty soon, and it's coming together pretty well, right, Allison?
That's right.
And then we had a department head meeting yesterday with regard to that. The recorder's office is plugging along. They're a little short staffed with vacations coming up and whatnot, doing lots of passports, birth certificates and whatnot. Tess is gonna be gone for 3 weeks in August, so she's trying to get caught up on her stuff, HR. Auditor treasurer, we know what the situation is there. Veteran service officer, there's lots of hospital visits going on. They're waiting for the new funding to get squared away as far as the legislature. There will be a 2023 Veterans Bonanza in La Crosse this year, on November the 4th, just before Veterans Day. So they're getting that squared away. Andy and IT talked about the BCA, and they're having some trouble. The Central Square project tentative agreements are coming together. And there's been a lot of hijacking going on by people getting into the computer system, so he's been doing a lot of patching. They come in, he patches, so he's doing a lot of patching on the computer system to get that squared away. Eric and Survey, City of La Crescent has a plat coming through that he's working on. That it's an existing portion of the old part of La Crescent that's getting replatted to a different use. And then planning and zoning, that 6-hour project, the subdevelopment out by Pine Creek. There's some prime ag soil that they're trying to get determined as far as how much of that is or is not available. There's 2 lots out there that are within the 2 miles, but the question is, does that make the whole works subject to that 2-mile rule, or just the 2 lots that are in the 2-mile radius? So he's getting an answer on that.
Who is Martin?
Martin. That's how that can be treated as far as that subdivision by the golf course. The comp plan we've talked about, the no wake zone is pretty well lined up, waiting for the core approval. And from Brian, the Highway 16 project is almost done. The shouldering and the striping are left to be finished. The Whipkey Hill projects on those 2 bridges are going to start the first in the next week to 2 weeks. Take about 2 weeks to get done. That's fairly low volume road. We talked about Wildcat already. Harold, the audits are started, budgets are started. One thing that was mentioned at finance this morning, we have received the local assistance for county and tribal monies. We got $50,000 from them that we have to determine what's going to be, how we're going to use it.
It's the 50,000.
An additional 50,000. Yeah. And then, you know, we've got the issue with this building as far as the air conditioning system. And if had problems with it, it's been patched, it cannot. You can only do so much.
Well, they're
So we're
really
getting
old.
close.
I mean, we don't have much choice. We gotta maintain our equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
The chillers are they're beyond repair,
Yeah.
so it's a big expense, but we still have money left in capital improvements, don't we, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Waiting for finals for, you know, the different projects that we have going on. Even though, like, I said, the thing he bid was for 296,000, but that's not the entire cost of the parking part, you know, so we have to see how much we're gonna take from the gas.
Okay.
To finish that off, the roof also, we don't have finals on that.
The thing is, there's the 50,000 that we got, the 50,000 we're gonna get that is not allocated. So we start talking about this air conditioning business and whatnot. There is a feasibility that we can cover that cost with that 100,000. We're all diving into the funds, the rest of the monies that we've got in capital improvement. The only other thing I got a CELCO meeting tonight in Rochester, and then on the Board of Adjustment, you're there. No, I'm not in the board. You're there for planning and zoning. I'll be there. So you'll be there during that. Is anybody else going to that?
Board of Adjustment is none of the board members. are.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm asking if anybody's gonna go and listen to that.
Oh, I don't plan on.
You wanna go?
I'm kind of wanting to go. If you're going, then I won't go. So I plan on attending that Board of Adjustment meeting. And that's about all I've got.
Had a personnel meeting yesterday. Personnel committee meeting, discussed the increases in the extension office and the veterans office. Rob gave his reasonings and some figures and facts of why he's requesting it. So that'll be coming for the board. He gave a good presentation, so and Lisa's gonna be here August 15th for the extension part of it I asked her to do that because Greg and I are already on extension committee. We're also on personnel, so we've heard this, but I felt it'd be important for all you guys to hear it from her as well, so that's why she'll be here on the 15th. I don't know, I got this email from DNOT yesterday. I don't know if you guys seen that.
Yeah, and that was pulled because there's some more information coming down the line and sheriff contacted us and it's pulled us. We're having a jail committee meeting here Friday morning. For this Friday. Yeah, some more discussion and more information coming down the line. It's you know, it's staffing and as you saw it, so I think we're gonna wait and see what we find out here Friday. Have more in more detail, to be honest with you. Okay, yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay.
How about Bob? Bob Schultz, you got anything?
Oh, Mr. Schultz, where are you, sir? You're still up there?
I'm still here. Yeah, the only thing I was gonna touch on, you just touched on, Dewey, was the meeting that we've got set for Friday, that staffing issues there. Other than that, it was pretty quiet.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, moving on to public comment. Oh, Carol, got anything you want to comment to before we, okay. Budget time is gonna be forthcoming. And public comment.
I just got one question. So on budget, are we gonna go through finance to do proposed budgets and then come as a board to look at them as a whole? Or are we gonna sit down and have a meeting with each department head on their budgets. Like at a workshop or something, you know, we did that one other time.
It was initially set up that the finance committee would meet with each one just to look at what their initial budget
Request.
requests were.
Yep.
And then that information would come to the board as a whole. Be it a workshop or whatever, but finance would look at it initially. The quick review, and then the board would look at it.
Find narrow it down or.
Kind of what's been done in the past, I think, hasn't it? Pretty much.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Otherwise, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
No discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. You know.